You're listening to the Trailblazers podcast, episode 42 with Damien Horne.
You're listening to the Trailblazers podcast, where we will explore the stories of successful Black professionals. Join us as we highlight the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished trailblazers to help provide the know-how, confidence, and motivation you need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen Hart.
Welcome back to another episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Hart, and today we are talking with a very inspiring, very encouraging brother by the name of Damien Horne. Damien actually grew up in a small town in Hickory, North Carolina, and he's one of 12 children, middle child, first in his family to earn a high school diploma. And, you know, this is a brother that went through some struggles, some tough family experiences. He'll share some of that in today's episode. But, you know, through all that, through homelessness in a couple instances, trying to pursue his dream, he went on to become a very accomplished musician, a public speaker. He's a world changer. You're going to feel his faith. You're going to experience some of, you know, what makes this brother tick. And it's no surprise to me that, you know, this is someone who has been able to work with the likes of John Legend and Faith Hill and some other great people out there. But, you know, I'm encouraged, I'm inspired to share today's message with you. I hope you guys are inspired to take a step in faith this week after listening to Damien's story. So without further delay, here is episode 42 with Damien Horne. Enjoy. Back to another episode of the Trailblazers podcast. Today I'm excited. I'm talking with a Twitter friend of mine, Damien Horne. He's an American recording artist, musician, and songwriter. Damien, thank you so much for being our special guest on today's episode.
The pleasure is mine, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. You know, Dan and I met through Twitter a few months back, and this man is always inspiring people on Twitter. If you haven't been following him, we'll definitely make sure we. In fact, just go ahead and throw out your handle right now, and we'll share it again to the tail end.
Yes, I'm on Stay Inspired 07, and that's the Twitter handle, and also encourageinspiremotivate.com.
Yeah, so while you're listening to this episode, if you want, you know, hit up at TBPod, hit up Stay Inspired 07. Let us know what you're thinking about today's episode. So, Damien, you know, we love to start off our episodes talking about gratitude, right? I feel like it has become a great place for us to kind of anchor ourselves and begin an episode with a spirit of gratitude. And I was wondering, you know, if you could be so kind to maybe share something that you're most grateful for in your life right now.
Right. I'm most grateful for my mother, man. I have an amazing mom. You know, a lot of that, I mean, it stems all the way from growing up the way that I did. You know, I was raised by a single mother and who had very little resources, but man, I always found a way to make things happen, and on top of that, have such a positive outlook on life, regardless of kind of what the surroundings were. And that was a huge, I know that's a huge catalyst then, and still continues to be in my life today. So I'm super grateful for my mother.
Wow. That's important, man, to, you know, reflect back on some of the, you know, as a parent myself, you know, I look back now more so with a greater measure of respect for what my parents have done for me as well, you know, in that time. And I guess it you know, as we grow older and we'll become wiser to some of the things that they sacrificed to do for us, right?
Absolutely.
Makes you appreciate them more. So, you know, I know that you're one of 12 children.
Yes, from a huge litter of children there. But like I grew up in a blended family. You know, some of those were my dad's, and some were products of my mom and dad together. But we all grew up in the same area and grew up together. 12 of us in Hickory, North Carolina.
Wow. And I know you're a believer, and you know, you've shared in the past you're the first in your family to graduate high school.
Yes, you know, like when I was growing up, you know, education, I mean, it was available, but my mom's the oldest of 16 children, and as
Wow.
she grew up raising her brothers and sisters, and so she didn't get to the opportunity to attend school a lot like some of her brothers and sisters did. She was pretty much the parent a lot of times raising those kids, and so even though we knew education was important, my mom, her work ethic was like a strong thing. And so I remember growing up, my mom even to this day is illiterate, can't read or write, but like I said, and that's one of the things I always found so amazing about her, that she still was able to make so many things happen and overcome so much in spite of that. But I knew at a young age I wanted to, and she always encouraged me and pushed me in the sense of to achieve more and to go further. And so I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school.
Wow.
And then later went on to college.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm also from a pretty big family. My dad is from, my dad's family at least. But, my dad is one of 11 kids.
Oh, wow,
my
yeah.
mom's one of 7. So I have probably 50 first cousins on my dad's side alone.
Yeah.
It's pretty
exactly.
crazy. And
I know that feeling.
So, Damien, at what point growing up, right, did you actually realize that you'd build a career in music and allow music, as I think you've said in the past, your mission and belief is to use your music to save lives.
Right. Well, I discovered kind of that gift at a really young age, kind of by default, by way of, the situation that I was in. Like I said, I grew up in the projects. At this time when I was young, about a teenager, I lost one of my older brothers was murdered. And then later on, another brother would pass away. And then I lost 2 younger brothers to prison, who went to prison 10 plus years apart. And I started seeing kind of this pattern, and I was thinking to myself, well, this is what life has to offer for me. And I remember being, terrified of those kind of things and trying to deal with that as best as I could as a young person. And my way of dealing with that was, writing. I used to write poetry all the time and write, my kind of thoughts out on paper. And then, as I got older, those poems turned into songs, and these would turn into things that I would sing. And in the process of that, people started taking notice and saying that I had a gift in music, a talent in that. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, I was like, well, I have to get away from where I'm at, and I have to find a place where, this kind of thing can become a reality for me. So what I did is, as soon as I graduated from high school, I packed up everything I had, which is, about a suitcase worth of clothes, and saved up about $400 and got a one-way Greyhound bus ticket to Hollywood, California.
Wow.
And I had never been outside of North Carolina before, and I learned really fast that $400 is not enough money to last to make work in LA. Wow. And so I found myself there homeless for the next 2 years, kind of in pursuit of this, but it became really quick. It turned really quick into just being able to survive, finding a place to sleep and to eat, and it was really like it's like being tossed in the waters and learning to swim.
So what kept you going through that period?
Well, it was a combination of things. What kind of kept me pushing in those moments is, like I said, first of all, was my mom and just the things that she had placed in my thought process and the way that I believed about myself and about life. And then catalysts along the way. I grew up attending the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club. So, the Boys and Girls Club was the first place to kind of like, allow me to develop my craft at what I did. And people there would tell me about my ability and I had potential. And then also the Salvation Army was connected to that, and it was responsible of the growing of my faith. And so God's word was a huge part of me believing things were possible, not in my own strength, but by what He said He had in store for me, like plans to prosper and to have hope in the future. So these are things I clung to when I was homeless and destitute.
I hear that, man. Jeremiah 29:11. I've banked on that verse many a time through many a struggle, and man, that's so awesome. I really appreciate you kind of sharing that background. So, I know you echoed, you're a poet and you write and you have, I know you wear many hats today. One of them is as a blogger, and you have encourage, inspire, motivate.com as one of your platforms.
Right.
Is there a favorite quote or mantra that you reflect on often that inspires you most? Or even Bible verses we're talking about?
Yeah, there's so many. One of them is actually, William Booth, which is the founder of the Salvation Army, used to say a quote that says, "As long as women weep and there's children who go hungry, I will fight. I will fight. As long as there are people who are destitute and people going in and out, I will fight. I will fight." And it's just kind of like what my purpose is. I believe in life. I've learned that. The difference between my gift and what my purpose was. And a lot of times, at an earlier age, I had to confuse, like, oh, my purpose is to play music and to do this. But I quickly realized that was my gift that worked according with my purpose, which is to encourage, inspire, and motivate people, and to be a light. And so, if the Bible talks about when a person's naked, you clothe them, and they're hungry, you feed them. And when they have a burden, you carry that burden with them. And that's what I want to do, and that's what I try to do through my music. But if music's not the tool, then it's a blog, and if it's not a blog, it's a smile. If it's not a smile, it's paying somebody's rent. However I can be available to do that. So
be careful, Damien. You might have a lot of people reaching out to you for some rent money.
I get that a lot of times already from my family. But I tried to find what avenues I feel like are put in front of me that I'm supposed to to be a light or be a catalyst for good, and that's really ultimately all I want to do, and I'm just fortunate enough to be able to use my gift in doing that as well.
Right. So, let's talk a bit. You've shared a couple minutes ago, the experience of being homeless in LA. You also shared you've lost siblings to the streets. And
yeah.
I want you to think back for a minute, and maybe share, a personal roadblock that you experienced. Maybe could you expand on that a bit and share what happened and what you actually did to overcome it and be able to move ahead to experience some of the success you're now experiencing, right?
Well, at a very young age, I felt like the biggest roadblock was kind of the environment that I was living in. And when you're young and you're that age, you don't really feel like you have any control, and you really don't. You're kind of a victim of kind of a lot of things that are around you. And I remember during that time just kind of feeling like I was out of control. Like I had no control over my life and what was happening around me, and this was just what my plight was supposed to be. But then later on, getting out of that situation and then moving into another situation of being homelessness, you realize again, like, wow, even when you're older and you think you're in control of things, you're still not in control. And and for me, it always goes back to God's word. We know the scripture, Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your path. Mm-hmm. And that's always been, the scripture has always been
your guiding light.
The guide. It's always been, what has guided me. It's always been what has brought me refuge and peace. And because I've come to terms with I am not in control, and I think sometimes we get a false sense of like we're in control, and we're in control in the sense of our own actions. But God has a plan, has a destiny for us, and when we relinquish that to Him and allow Him to steer the ship, then you can't be in a better place than that. And so that's what I kind of try to make sure I do every day, and not try to lean to my own understanding or my own will and my own power, because it pales in comparison.
It absolutely does. So true. Damien, I was actually recently I read this book called Rework, and
Hmm.
it's authored by the guys who actually founded 37 Signals. And they were
Okay.
talking a bit about, learning from failures, learning from successes, right? And learning from what's working, right? And I was
Right.
curious to know, what's been some of the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself based on your successes? Like, what's really worked for Damien to this point that's kind of helped you achieve some measure of success?
Really just focusing on, first of all, having a vision. The Bible also says, "My people perish because of lack of vision." Like, so knowing where I want to go, knowing and tapping into that. And then it's crazy, how a lot of times when you're working towards something and you're doing something and you find how you can help and benefit somebody else, how what is for you is tied into that, and I think that's one of the big things I learned. There's a book called The Go-Giver that I read, that when I read it, a lot of it, clicked for me, because I feel like that happens in my life a lot of times. I just try to focus on what I'm here to do for others, and in the process of that, the things that I desire and want come with that, which is really weird, and in some sense, but it's also kind of tied into the law of like reciprocity. Like, whatever you put out, it comes back to you, and I believe that law is just as real as gravity is. If you're putting out love, you're going to get love, and if you're putting out hate, that's what comes in return. So it's just what's been a big tool for me is just I'm conscious about putting out what I want to see happen in my life. If I believe, man, I really need my finances to change. So, well, let me think of a way I can bless somebody else, because there's always somebody who's in a bigger need, or I want to experience love. So I consciously focus on putting love out there.
Mm. So let's apply this to, and I appreciate you kind of sharing, starting with a vision, right?
Right.
Let's put that in a practical sense for those listening, right?
Okay.
So, you're an international recording artist and musician and songwriter, and you've had so much goodness that has come by way of your career in music. How do you approach your work, your career, in that sense, right? Like, take us from,
Right.
what happens once you've envisioned kind of your path forward, right? So for 2017, you're looking ahead.
Okay.
What actually happens to kind of move that from that vision to reality of you realizing a goal or a dream?
Well, the biggest thing I always tell people, and it's worked so much for me, is like, once you get a vision and you have a direction and know what you want to do and where you want to head, then to write it down, like to literally write it down and put it in a place where you can see it like daily. If you go into my music room at my house now, for 2017, my focus is to do a one-man show called Shine. And so I have this big board on my wall that I've written out what I want that to look like, when I want that to happen, and everything that kind of incorporates on that. And then every day I go by that, I look at that, I tweak it, and I write down tangible things that I can do each day that will get me a step closer. A lot of times when you think about the big vision of what you might want for your life, sometimes it seems so huge, and then you just don't know how you can get there. So I really focus on what I need to do day to day that will make that thing come to pass. I remember maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I've been doing that same thing for the longest time. Actually, a friend of mine told me a long time ago, just like, write it out where you can see it. Just kind of the same thing I'm saying. And I remember one day going into my room and looking on the wall, and I used to have all these sticky notes all over my wall. Like, I want this, I want to be able to do this, and I want this to happen, I want that to happen. And then one day I was just sitting there talking to a friend, and I looked up at the wall, and I just started looking at all those notes, and I was like, oh, I've done that. And I would take it off, and I've done that, and I've done that, and I've done that, and I've done that. And it was crazy. I just kind of looked up one day and realized everything that I put on that wall came to pass. It happened, Wow. And so there's something about, I believe there's something about being able to write that down and see it, and then tangibly every day, just taking a step forward.
Yes.
It takes a while to climb a mountain, but if you're making moves at that every day, you're gonna look up one day and you're like, oh, I'm at the top of this mountain.
Yeah, like I like the quote, "You eat an elephant one bite at a time," right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that a lot of trailblazers have, other trailblazer guests have shared with us. The power of writing down your goals and then
Yeah.
just taking action steps. Tasking out each month, each week, each
Right.
day accordingly to be able to move towards that goal. I think
Right.
something else that add to that, Damien, is to be focused, right? And know what
Yes.
goal is priority one, right?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
not being distracted by a million different things that are happening.
Yeah, that can definitely be a thing that happens. I've experienced that a lot in the past myself. There's so many things that I wanted to do,
Right.
but prioritizing what that those initial goals are, and being focused in those. Like I know. I'm one of those people that they call a jack of all trades, a master of none. So I feel like I can
Yes.
do a lot of things. Not a master of anything, but I do so many different things. And so like you want to do it, you want to do the blog, and you want to do this, and you want to do that, you want to do this, record that. But you have to prioritize and focus in on one thing, those energies into that, and then allow the other things to come in kind of like a linear fashion.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to major in minor things, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So, I've seen videos that you've done, with being part of a program called Redemption Song Stories.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe it's a program to serve inmate populations in jails and prisons and juvenile detention facilities. Could you tell us a little bit more about your involvement with that?
Yes. Redemption Songs is an event that's put together by a group called the Beat of Life, and this organization focuses on working with people who are incarcerated, and but using music to kind of as a therapy, as a release, as a way of rehabilitation, and it's an awesome program. I've always been closely knit with kind of the prison systems, basically because I had two younger brothers in prison for so long who I would visit and write, and just you know there's a lot that goes on with your psyche when you're in there, and the things that happen, and the sense of hopelessness, and like I said, it goes back to me, for it's like when I was in prison, you visited me, and so these are the things like I tend to focus on. But this organization has found a way to incorporate music where we go into the prisons and we actually get to write with inmates, and we're it's a group of songwriters, established songwriters from all over the place, and we go in and we literally just sit and kind of connect with inmates and hear their stories, and then turn their stories into songs, and it's amazing, kind of what people once you can connect with them, what they'll reveal, what they'll tell you, and how you're able to use that moment for some healing on both sides. A lot of times you go into things like that and you think, well, hopefully I'll do some good here, and it does so much more for you, and that's kind of what the Redemption Song thing is about.
Wow. How can we learn more about that? That's an interesting. Is that a national program, or is it something specific that you got a part of in Nashville?
It's based in Nashville. It's national though. It's they do it all over the country. It's based in Nashville, called the Beat of Life. And if you go to the thebeatoflife.com, it'll tell you about that particular event that they do called Redemption Songs, and they do a lot of other kind of events with inmates in prisons. It's amazing. There's also another organization I work with called sendmusicianstoprison.com, and I'll actually be going to Rikers Island on the 17th, where I'll go into into the prison system and do a performance where I'll perform my music and I'll tell my story. And so it's a lot. There's so many different organizations like that I'm a part of, just because I believe in in the action and what they're doing for people who are sometimes forgotten.
Right. Wow. So, Damien, you are a busy guy. I mean, I know you're traveling a lot. You talked a minute ago about your vision for 2017 with your one-man show. What are you actually doing to push yourself to new and higher heights and keep from getting caught in comfort zones today?
I first of all, I keep people around me who just kind of keep me in check. I have really close friends and people who I trust in what they do and what they say and what they what they mean to me in my life as far as mentorship and I'm constantly striving to to move and be creative and to create this platform where it highlights good, and a lot of that is what encourages, inspire, motivators is about. I feel like the world sometimes can seem really saturated with a lot of negative things, and I feel like part of my purpose is here to bring at least a balance to that, to show like, man, there's a lot of great going on in the world. There's a lot of good things happening in the world, and so I stay motivated by everyday life. Anytime if I feel like I see something that's contradictory to the good that's in the world, and I feel like, man, there's more that I need to do to promote the good, And so everyday life keeps me motivated. Every day I wake up, I turn on the news and you hear the the tragedies that's happening in our world and stuff today, and I'm like, man, we need more good. We need more good to be highlighted. We need people to see that and to know that. So for me, it's easy to stay motivated in that sense.
And you and I, that's a common vision we share, right? I'm wondering, is there a way that, because you do a great job at inspiring others, I'm sure that maybe some of the people listening to this episode would love to be an inspiration, be a motivation, but maybe don't know how. Maybe that's not a natural thing for them.
Right.
Could you share maybe some insights into how someone could go about being an inspiration and a motivation in their little community, whether it be their family or their schools, if it's, some of our youth that are listening, or even in our workplace, right? Like, how can we go about being an inspiration to others?
I love that question because I feel like there's a zillion ways to do that, and some of the simplest ways to do that is just the way we treat people every day. Like that alone just takes a conscious effort of like, hey, I'm gonna season my speech with grace and kindness as opposed to anger. I'm gonna hug people. I'm gonna smile. I'm gonna speak to somebody who might seem to be alone. I'm gonna make a conscious effort to go outside of my comfort zone to make somebody else feel comfortable. And then second of all, finding out what your gift is. I believe a lot of times our purpose is tied into what our gift. Everybody has a gift and everybody has a purpose. I believe that. So when you discover what that gift is, use that gift to encourage and inspire and motivate people. One of the mantras I use all the time is shine, and that's kind of what the one man show is based on. It's like, I get the opportunity to go back to where I'm from and speak at Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club events, homeless shelters and prisons, and all I do is really present my life story, and I use my gift, and I shine when I excel at what I do as a musician, and when you do that, I believe it liberates other people to do the same thing. People might hear my story. It's like, man, this guy came from this, and this, and now he's doing this, and this. Right. So, it's like, oh, if he can do that, then I can do the same thing. So there's so many ways to be enlightened and be encouraging, from it's just as simple as the things I mentioned up to finding out what your gift and your purpose is, and then using those things, not just using them for, and this was, young man's thinking, before, well, this is what I'm supposed to do to make money. And those things are great and they will come, but like, true purpose, it has to grow, be outside of money, because that yes, it comes and goes. But trust me, money comes and goes. So no matter what situation you might be in, but like you can literally change somebody's life, with your gift. So
Yes, so true, so true. What I love about what you just echoed a moment ago was really the power in your own testimony, right? The power in your
yes,
own story. All too often you get caught up in things people can't relate to. But, when we're
right,
transparent and we share a story, there oftentimes is something that someone can grab hold of and connect to in your story that's real to them, even if they didn't experience the exact same thing.
right.
There's a parallel there that they can say, you know what, you went through that. I kind of went through something similar in the past or even right now. Someone listening to this episode is going to say, you know what, I'm just coming out of a homelessness,
Right.
situation. Damien, was able to take, to navigate that and get to the point where he achieved his goals of being a recording artist and so on and so forth. And that is what somebody can hold on to, not always just
Ab-
the bling and the money and the material,
right.
but I'm really happy that you shared that. It's real,
Yeah,
that's
it is. It's an awesome thing, and the cool thing about it is that everybody has a story.
yes,
Everybody has a story, and it's unique to them in the sense of, like there there's no other story like their story, and just by sharing that alone and their accomplishments and their trials and the things they've dealt with, it already sets you apart because
yes,
we're all uniquely have that unique difference about us when it comes to our story and who we are as a person. And when we tap into those things, like nobody can be a better Damien than I can be. So it's just about
exactly,
finding out who you are and living that out and then sharing it with people,
yes.
and then we connect that way.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you. This has been amazing. We're getting set to wrap up, but before we do, I would love to be able to tap into some of the resources that you use on a day to day. And one of the things we like to ask is, what's a book that you've read in the past that's inspired you most?
Oh man, there's been a few. There's a book. I think I mentioned a little earlier. There's a book called The Go Giver, and I remember this book. I reading this a long time ago, but this book I remember after reading it, it just really changed the way I thought about how I gave. You know what I'm saying, and how I gave not just money, but how I gave of my time and my talents to other things, and how it affects the process of what you're seeking in life, by giving to others and helping others in the process. So The Go Giver, The Alchemist has been a huge um, um, influential book for me, just kind of based on purpose and going after purpose in life. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese, which talks about
Yeah.
change and like dealing with change, because change is one of those things that's inevitable in life. It's going to come, and being prepared and ready for that and how to adapt to that. And then and then ultimately for me, the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And, there's many stories, life lessons, proverbs, songs that just are just great. Even just great snippets of like tools of every day. I tend to use it in my everyday language where, before I was saying to season your speech with grace. You know what I'm saying? Like when I talk to somebody, speak with grace in your voice. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Just different snippets of just like even just nuggets that you can use every day that for me have like really affected the way that I see the world and the way I'm able to affect the world.
Right. I love that. Damon, what's something small you've done this month that you're proud of?
Something small. I stopped drinking sodas. I'm super proud of it, which was super hard for me. I don't drink coffee or anything, and I tend to like have the craziest hours. I go to bed late and get up super early. Just always on the go, travel a lot, and like soda was like my like caffeine.
Caffeine.
Yeah, and so I was like, all right, I have to stop doing it. I'm trying to be a little better. I'm trying to move over to like juice, like orange juice, something a little better than like.
Surprisingly, you consume a lot more water, and I tell you what, it replaced. I can't explain it, but I've
Really,
replaced coffee with water, and just been
really.
drinking a lot more. Yeah,
Well, I definitely need to do that, and I'm gonna have to do that because I can't drink sodas anymore.
Yeah.
But I've been doing good. I've been strong. I've been strong with that. So I'm trying to hang on. But I'm proud of the fact that I was able to do that for
That's good,
the
man.
past month so far.
We'll keep you prayed up that you can hold on to that one.
I know.
My wife is a big soda drinker as well.
Really?
Yeah. So, Damien, name an online resource. Could be an app, software, or tool that you use every day that you can't live without.
An app that I use every day.
I know you travel a lot.
There's multiple. Yeah, I was just gonna say I actually use a translator a lot. I have this translator on my phone. I travel a lot, and I get in situations. I'm going to London tomorrow, and just recently this year I was in Abu Dhabi, and I've been to Qatar, Switzerland, and Japan, and so translating this world. It's a world travel app where it just kind of tells you about the different things in the area or things you can do. Because I travel a lot, but sometimes traveling you don't get to necessarily see. Especially if I'm traveling for music stuff, you're
right.
I feel like I've been everywhere, but I haven't seen anything. So it's like now I'm more focused on what can I do in this area when I'm there and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, before we wrap up, I would love to invite you to take a minute and share one action that our trailblazers can take this week to help them to blaze their trail.
Okay, that's awesome. I think the one thing that I think the trailblazers can do this week is to go sit down and write out your vision. Write it down. And sometimes I know that might sound like a small thing to do, but I promise you won't regret it. You write it down, post it somewhere where you can see it every day, and continue to look at it every day, revise it. And it's okay to revise it and touch it. No, you know what? I don't want this. This is what I do want. I want to add this to it. But be able to see that go every day and be able to tangibly take one step each day. For me, it was just I remember one of the things was I want to learn how to play the guitar. I was okay, that was the goal. And then I remember I was all right, step one, get a guitar. You know what I'm saying? So it was all right, just things like that. And every day I would find something to do that would get me closer to that. And this is when I had no money. So it's all right, well, I got to get money to get a guitar. So, and I have to find out about good guitars. And so a list of just tangible things, something I could do every day to get, closer and closer to that goal, and this is, today guitar is the main instrument that I play. But I remember the day when I had no idea what to do with a guitar in my hand. And it's just crazy that being able to write that down and see it and intangibly do something every day, I can look back and then now it's just funny to think, oh man, I remember looking at a guitar, what am I supposed to do with this thing? and now, just feeling comfortable behind that and creating, using it as part of my living, part of my career now. And so I would say for the trailblazers is to write down what you see for yourself. Write down your vision and write down some things that you can do every single day to get you closer to that goal.
That is awesome. Damien, I want to say thank you, man. Coming on the podcast and your story is one that has inspired me, has set the tone for my day, my week, this month. I mean, to listen to your past challenges and going from being homeless in LA to, as you're sharing right now, you're traveling the world and living out your dream, and not just succeeding in a selfish sense, but you're also giving back. As you said, the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club was what helped you to grow, and as you've echoed, you've been giving back to them as well, and giving back, in so many ways. And I'm just inspired by your journey and your story and your knowledge and your wisdom. And I couldn't be more appreciative of you, sharing your story and being transparent with our community and, lifting us up today, man. This has been an inspiring episode.
Well, thank you so much, brother. And I feel the same about you, man. Like anytime I get the opportunity just to kind of share the story and hopefully encourage and inspire and motivate somebody else, you're by you having this platform, you're allowing me to live out my purpose. So I thank you, man. This is what I live to do, and you allow me to do that. So I'm very honored about that as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, and we'll definitely stay in touch. Before we let you go, tell us how we can stay connected to you, and then we'll finish up for today.
Okay, you can stay connected to me at StayInspired07 on Twitter. Also, my name, Damien Horne, DamienHorne, DamienHorne.com. I also have a Twitter with my name. I have Instagram, Facebook, all the whole nine. And then also EncourageInspireMotivate.com, which is a landing page for good news.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's Damien Horne. Damien Horne. It's under my name.
Awesome. Damien, thank you so much, man. It's been real.
No, thank you, Brother Hart. Thank you so much.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'll be posting links to all of today's book recommendations and links mentioned on our show notes page at tbpod.com. If today was your first time listening to the Trailblazers podcast, I just want to extend a warm Trailblazers welcome to you. We're so happy to have you here, and we encourage you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. Go ahead and browse through some of our past episodes to keep the knowledge flowing. If you're a fan of the podcast and today's content, and you're maybe already subscribed to the podcast, please continue to share and invite your friends, your family, or colleagues to listen to an episode that you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories will be moved to make significant changes that will have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday by about 5 a.m. Eastern. Trailblazers, jump off this podcast today. Go find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail. Cheers.